the perception of being a man or a male figure, even to my daughter. There's a lot of unhealthy elements of not being kind of a complete man that can show up, whether that's frustration, easy to get angered or be annoyed. I think all of those things spring from not being in touch with your masculine side, not having mastery over it, and then also having just that pent-up, bottled emotions for years and years and years. Right. It's definitely something that I didn't want to continue. I think the birth of my daughter was kind of an impetus for me to start working on these things. But I've realized more and more, it's something that I really want to work on. It's something that I really need before anybody else. Right. So, yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Cardinal Way for Men. My name is Ed Cardinal, and this is the Next Man Up, Candid Conversations with Men. It's a new format for me in 2024, so I'm excited to take on this venture to get to know men on a personal level, so that we may help other men in the process. And it's a privilege to have a neighbor of mine, Mike, be my first guest. I've gotten to know Mike a bit by walking around our apartment complex and seeing his interaction with his young daughter, and it's a beautiful thing to see what an amazing father he is, and what a great man he is. I've gotten to know him a bit also because he's a member of my virtual men's group, and we can talk a little bit more about the benefits of being a part of a men's group, either virtual or in person. So, welcome, Mike.
Thanks for having me, Ed. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So my first question is, our cultural conditioning, our societal expectations as a man, how has that influenced you as a man, maybe growing up as a young boy, or even now? Has that impacted you in negative ways or positive ways, or both? And how has it done that?
Yeah, I think especially growing up, I come from a family of blue-collar workers. Most of my family is blue-collar workers. So I think there was a very kind of hard-nosed, very tough expectation of what it meant to be a boy, what it meant to be a man. You weren't supposed to show your emotions. You were supposed to be strong. You were really supposed to be this kind of island unto yourself. Right. And even just the dynamics in my family growing up, there was a lot of expectations put on, my father or my stepfather, just in terms of being tough, of being strong. So it was, I only really got to see a one-sided nature of what it meant to be a man. The kind of softer side wasn't really explored. And, growing up, more sensitive boys or more sensitive men, labels were placed on them. Absolutely. Or they were picked on, or they were bullied. So that's interesting, to realize that that's more of a negative than it is a net positive. Right. As I got older in life, you start to see that, that plays out even a lot of male friendships. Right. They become very surface level. You don't have those relationships that you can go deeper with. Right. So when there's times that you need support, because of some life circumstance that you're going through, whether it's good or bad, right. I personally found myself not having those outlets. Right. And it's a difficult thing to then later in life look back and realize, all right, these are the things that I need to foster, but I don't really know how to do them in a way that is really going to serve me and that extended male community that I'm looking for. Right.
I can definitely identify with you as far as your upbringing. For me, I was a sensitive boy and was ridiculed by my father if I would cry or if I showed any sort of vulnerability. And like you, it carried into my adulthood. And for men, it's affecting them in a negative way, physically, emotionally, mentally, in their relationships. So I really admire your taking on the task of doing something about it in your life as an adult, because I know there's probably been some challenges in your life that have come about because of your upbringing. Can you identify, is there one you can identify that is something that you're deciding you need to work on?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even aside from the personal challenges that brings up, the lack of community, the not having those outlets for support that I know I need.
Right.
I even see it bleed through even professionally,
right.
because to me it becomes so much of, I have to figure it out. I have to solve these solutions. I can't rely on other people. I can't turn to other people because, me not knowing an answer or me needing help is going to be perceived as a sign of incompetence or a sign of weakness, because that's a lot of the stereotypes and that's a lot of the behavior that was kind of modeled
right.
and pushed on me
right.
from such a young age,
right.
Externally from people in my life, and then also internally from my family. I think one of the biggest challenges that I didn't even realize was a challenge was, the perception of being a man or a male figure, even to my daughter. There's a lot of unhealthy elements of not being kind of a complete man that can show up, whether that's frustration, easy to get angered or be annoyed. I think all of those things spring from not being in touch with your masculine side, not having mastery over it, and then also having just that pent-up, bottled emotions for years and years and years.
Right.
It's definitely something that I didn't want to continue. I think the birth of my daughter was kind of an impetus for me to start working on these things. But I've realized more and more, it's something that I really want to work on. It's something that I really need before anybody else.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think the thing that I've been impressed with witnessing you with your daughter is your kindness, your patience, your being present with her, your lovingness. What's perceived in our society as feminine traits, and looked down upon as boys growing up or as men, is actually something that we should be embracing as men, because it's healthy.
Yeah. What's interesting about that is I think that comes from the fact that, especially with her, there is no judgment. I'm allowed to be silly. I'm allowed to be vulnerable. I can cry in front of her. I can express an entire range of emotions. I can be more connected, I guess, with myself. And again, there isn't that judgment. It's just an acceptance. This is who this person is. I'm going to see this range and this wave. And I think that really opens me up to being a lot more understanding, a lot more patient, a lot more present with her. And I think ultimately, that kind of relationship, especially with other men, is what we all need, and especially what I'm striving for through participation, with your group.
Right. And you're, as a father, you're modeling behavior for your daughter. It'd be interesting to sort of envision if it would be different if you had a son. How would that be different, do you think?
Oh, I think if I had a son, I think I would struggle a lot more. Yeah. I think there would be a lot more projection of unhealthy male stereotypes and male behavior. Unfortunately, I think I see that played out a lot with some of my peers that have younger sons. And I don't want to say the expectation, but it's kind of that subconscious, unspoken approval or disapproval that you can see the parents put on their sons. Anymore, it almost feels like almost like a hyper masculine caricature where it's pushing so hard to be a boy and get in the dirt and to do these things that I see a lot of parents making what feels like the same mistakes, but out of, what they think are good intentions. But there is a huge suppression of just letting them be.
Yes.
And if they want to play with dolls, let them play with dolls. If they want to explore this, let them explore this. If they don't want to play in the dirt, let them color and draw. So, a lot of interesting behavior. And unfortunately, I think because I'm just in the beginning of my journey of kind of dealing with some of those issues myself, I think unfortunately I probably would just project them back on a son.
Right. What is your definition of masculinity? What is the type of man that you want to be that you didn't witness growing up, or you don't witness in the media or society? How do you want to break the mold? What do you want to do?
I think this is going to be an evolving definition for me. So I'll give you my answer, and I hope it's enough of an answer. For me, when I think about it, there really needs to be a sense of completeness. There needs to be a balance of, perceived feminine traits, being more sensitive, being more connected, but then also kind of like an internal strength and confidence that, one would normally associate with more of a masculine being. But again, to me, it really is about being connected to both of those things and having both of those sides be in balance. It's really easy to put on kind of a false bravado and to become kind of like that arrogant jerk, if you're good at your job or good at a sport. And then I think it's also easy to get too wrapped up in the unhealthy emotional side too.
Right.
So that's what I would like to strive for, and I think that's what would make me feel the most complete as a man is being able to master both of those sides.
You touched upon not having that community of men that you can bounce things off of or get support from. And through my research in the last couple of years about the challenges that men are coming up against, one of them is, a major one, is isolation and disconnection and loneliness. It's an epidemic of our time, and it got exacerbated by COVID. And so men are really struggling with that loneliness, that feeling isolated. And a population of men that I'm starting to learn about that are really struggling with is actually the 20-some-year-old young men who are more into the technology. So they're spending a lot of time by themselves. They don't have those social interactions. So what have you done to sort of help with that process of connecting with other men?
It's a very slow process for me. For much of my life, I was so career focused, and my community was built with the people that I worked with. And a lot of my work took me on the road, so I'd spend a lot of time away from home. So I developed kind of an ingrained habit or pattern of living where that was my community. It was more important for me to focus on things professionally than it was personally. So now it's a lot of, the biggest thing that I'm doing right now is trying to get back in touch with who I am, what's important to me, the things that I want to do in life, whether it's picking up trail running again, going mountain biking again, and trying to explore what opportunities there are for me to become part of a bigger community doing those things. And doing things like a men's group is incredibly beneficial because I always feel like I can share snippets of my life momentarily because I know that there's a retreat coming eventually. So being part of a reoccurring group where I have that accountability, where I have that kind of repeated exposure feels almost therapeutic at this point in time, because it is just like, all right, these are people that I can trust. This is a safe space. Nothing's going to happen. And so that, to me, is also one of those incredibly beneficial things, because it's helping to rewrite that program in my mind, where it's like, no, you've got to force yourself to share a little bit more. Don't just be topical. Like, these are people, these are men that actually want to hear my experience and share with it and grow from, which has been really nice too about even your leadership in the program, because I think you have a good sense of knowing when to push and when to back off, which has been really, really beneficial, because I think especially for men that are coming in a little bit wounded, it's easy for us to just be like, I'm going to retreat away from this and back out entirely, not be a part of this. So that's been really beneficial for me.
Yeah, I mean that's a you brought up the term wounded, and we're all wounded on some level, and that's what we're trying to sort of heal from, that woundedness. And that ripping the Band-Aid off is like, for men, that's, well, you just got to tough it up and you just got to rip the Band-Aid off, and that's not necessarily the best way to go about it.
No, not at all. And it's, even for me, it's also a really good practice in active listening. Because a lot of times, my mind wants to immediately prioritize, I'm having a really bad week. What I'm going through is the most important thing. Or if I'm having a really great week, it can feel like your experience is not as relevant as somebody that's going through a tougher time. So again, without having deeper connections with men, especially people that I work with, it's easy to zone out and just be like, all right, I'm not going to share my experience because it isn't worth my time. Or I'm not going through the same thing as you. My minor issue is nothing compared to your more major issue. And I think that, to even go back to what it means to be masculine, I think that's part of it. We all want that respect of people listening to us, considering our ideas, considering how we're feeling. But I think as men, we're not always taught how to do that for other men, and that's a big part of what you give in the universe is what eventually comes back to you.
Absolutely. We as men want to fix things. We're fixers. And just the process of being an active listener is really helpful for someone. When you're an active listener, and when you are present like you are with your daughter, and when you're giving eye contact and you really care. I think that's the thing that I'm really impressed with our virtual men's group, is that level of caring that is starting to be fostered through that interaction of that bi-weekly group. And there's, like you said, we're all going to be struggling at deeper levels at different times. So to be able to be there for someone who's really, really struggling is just the fact that a man can say, I'm struggling. And the response from the other men is, we're here to support you. What do you need? And just that in itself is really helpful for me.
Yeah. It's a bizarre concept. It really is for a lot of people. I mean, I think a lot of people grow up in that you just push it down. You don't deal with it or you figure it out on your own.
Right. I just finished a book. It's called We Need to Hang Out, and it's about what we're talking about, this need for connection with men and why we don't have it. And men have a tendency to do activities together where they're shoulder to shoulder. Women are more face to face, and there's nothing wrong with having activities to hang out with men and do, but we need to be doing more of that stuff, and also having that balance of maybe the face to face connections too. Yeah,
it's so funny because there's I'll call him a friend. We don't really know each other that deeply. We're social acquaintances. I recently helped him do some work on his property, and it was the epitome of working shoulder to shoulder like that. I think that the days we spent together, maybe we spoke 10 words to each other outside of anything task related. I couldn't tell you anything more about him as a person. He couldn't tell you anything more about me as a person. And so it was interesting, especially starting up the men's group, to see like, yeah, wow, that is a pretty unhealthy dynamic to have, where you could spend, 5 days of time with somebody and not know anything more about them.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of epitomized a lot of my male relationships.
Yeah, well, that's funny because my wife could spend like a whole day with a girlfriend, and they're just talking the whole time, and then she comes home and then she needs to call that friend because she forgot to mention something, and they spent the whole day. I mean, it's just and that's the one thing I noticed when I moved here is the difference between my wife's ability to build community with other women here compared to me, and she's building this rather large community of women, not only in our apartment complex but in the community. And for me, I'm like, what's going on here? I'm having a hard time connecting with other men. So I created a meetup group, and that kind of started pretty well, but sort of kind of faded. So sometimes you have to kind of create your own community, get out of your comfort zone, because there's a lot of men out there who are craving it. They just need a little bit of a nudge to take some action and do something about it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, what are the? You're a part of this virtual men's group. Are you finding it helpful?
I am. Yeah. There's even just like a little bit of accountability. I personally find that that's something that's so easy to do, to get out of integrity with my actions, my behavior. And again, I know some of that is a spillover from childhood and habits and patterns that have developed over the year. But when it's just yourself, like, it's very easy to let things like that go because there's nobody checking your behavior. And I think a lot of existing relationships that I had, again, they don't function on that level. Like, it doesn't matter. It's, and it's probably also stuff that I wouldn't ever share with people. So I really enjoy that aspect of it. And I don't know, it's hard to put it all into words, how it feels, but it's only been a few weeks now, but it feels kind of comforting to just be like, all right, this is time that I'm sitting working on myself with other people that are in the same position.
Absolutely.
So it's a nice mental shift. And I think some of the things that we talk about does carry through, like throughout the week, where I sit and just allow myself to have deeper contemplation about things, or even the relationship with my wife, be more communicative as opposed to just let me keep all this stuff inside.
Right. Yeah. Women's communication styles are much different than men, as you know. I'm sure you've experienced it in your marriage.
Oh yeah.
I've needed to really work on being a better listener with my wife, because she has a tendency to need to talk things through and out, as opposed to me. I just, like, we're doers. We're fixers, we're doers. So not sort of zoning out and checking out when she's talking these things through and trying to be present. I'm still working on it, but that's something that I'm definitely working on as a husband, as a man. So. Besides the cultural conditioning and the societal expectations of men and boys, what do you think some of the underlying fears are of men connecting with other men? What's holding them back? Or what was holding you back? I mean,
For me personally, I know there's elements of like a fear of rejection, of not being well received because you are struggling with something, or you do feel a little bit weird or strange or different, whatever quirk you think you have, or whatever element of your personality that, is more prominent. Like if you are more sensitive, if you are more quiet, if you are more introverted, whatever the case may be. And I think, again, for myself, I struggle with issues of self-worth. So there's a huge element of, well, I don't deserve these things that kind of underlies that. And again, I think that comes back from some of the early male stereotypes that were pushed on me, because it's like, you've got to behave this way. Well, I'm not behaving that way, so I must not be that much of a man, or I don't deserve these things because I haven't worked hard enough, or I haven't suffered enough to get to this point. Those are kind of, again, for me personally, kind of the shadow elements that I know I have to work on still, and just be like, no, I do deserve this. I am worthy of this. And I'm not going to get rejected. And even if I do get rejected, is that really the worst thing that could happen?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. We talked about this, had been the last group session or the time before, about homophobia. That's one of the things that hold men back, is that fear of being perceived as gay because you want to have a connection with other men, the intimacy, and that's a huge fear in men that's holding them back. I feel that's something that I've dealt with and I had to work through. I joined a men's group back in the early days of my personal development. It was the best thing I ever did, and that was one of the things I had to work on. That it's okay to want to connect with other men. There's nothing wrong with it, and to be around men and feel safe and feel heard and not feel judged is, it's the complete opposite of what I was exposed to growing up.
Yeah.
So I had to relearn and feel comfortable with what it means to be a man, a whole man, a man who is not following those stereotypes that are really harmful.
Yeah, I think especially up until very recent times, especially culturally, being more connected was really looked down upon and became one of those kind of like toxic masculine ideas that was kind of pushed out and perpetrated on everybody. I mean, even the difference in language and words that would be used to describe people, that were more sensitive. And I think that hope, at least to me, that seems like a behavior that's definitely going to change with newer generations, just with how much more accepting people are of everybody, regardless of lifestyle.
Right.
But yeah, that's definitely something that I can look back on and be like, yeah, you can hear the words, you can replay the stories in your head of just things were very different.
Yes.
And not always for the better. Like, that's not a good nostalgic look back.
No, and it's been hard. As I said, it's been harmful on many levels for men. But if I look at my father, he is no different than I am. He's a sensitive man who, even more so than me, wasn't allowed to express that. So he just held it in, bottled it in, and still paying the price physically and mentally. So we're beginning to break the patterns. And as I said, I admire men like you that are doing that, because you're going to be a role model for other men. Just hearing this interview is going to be helpful for other men. I know it, because men are going to hear this and say, wow, there's someone else who feels the same way I do, and he's doing something about it. And there are ways that I can break these patterns. I can get involved in a men's group. I can get involved in therapy. I can better myself. There's a lot of different vehicles to do that. So,
well, I appreciate you doing this. I mean, one of the things that I know that I've always lacked in my life are really healthy male role models or male peers. There's a lot of those relationships are marked by some level of dysfunction. Yeah. So that, it's without ever having people that are different or that are outside of that mold, that are more a reflection of that kind of balanced viewpoint of masculinity that I talked about before. Like, I'm just striving and creating this weird, impossible ideal in my head. I'm shooting for a target that doesn't exist. So it's nice. It's nice to have that, and then it's also nice being a part of the group and being with other men that are also part of that same journey too, because it helps kind of break down some of those mental barriers of, I'm doing this all by myself, or I have to do this all by myself, or even just realizing the difference in struggles and where people are at, and seeing that there's an upside and a downside to every situation in a healthy, controlled way.
Yeah, in a container of, like a men's group.
Yeah.
Right? It's a safe container to kind of work through some of that stuff, and then also to support each other, and then have other men model to us what it means to be a man. I'm going to post a link to our virtual men's group so men can learn more about that. And again, Mike, I appreciate you taking the time to be on the Next Man Up, be on my first guest, and look forward to witnessing your continued journey as a man. You're in the right place at the right time, and just really looking forward to witnessing that unfolding of you as a man.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, and again, thank you for these opportunities. And to me, when you ask me about this, it's like, this is an opportunity that I can't say that to. There is no excuse, because again, part of being a man is, how am I showing up for other people?
Right.
What kind of community am I creating, and do I not want to be on camera? Am I worried about how I sound or saying something, that's going to sound silly? But it's just kind of like, no, all of those fears are trivial when you really sit down to it. And it's like, no, this is about supporting somebody that's supporting me.
Yeah. Well, appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, totally. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Until you see me again, be well. Take care. Bye-bye.